What up, guys? Welcome to the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. Today, we're going to talk to John from Tap Cancerities, one of the founders of the organization. And I met him originally down in Costa Rica. So I was there for the Costa Rica camp that I do and got in and, he was there training with Ron down in Tamarindo, and we started chatting, and, we both run competitions, and, so we're talking about that kind of stuff, talking about the business, behind the scenes stuff. And then I saw him again saw his team out in Vegas. He sent me a message on Instagram afterwards because I was out there for the CGI, right? I was out there for the CGI, and they had a booth out there and everything else. And I was talking to his team, and after I was done talking to his team, he sent me a message and, was just reaching out. So I was like, man, why don't we just have you on and just to talk about what you're doing, right? Because I think it's interesting. I think they're probably one of the largest, probably the largest, fundraising sort of thing in jiu-jitsu, charitable event in jiu-jitsu that it's raised a ton of money, and so figure we'd have him on to talk about that, kind of see how he got started with jiu-jitsu, but also talk about his organization in case you're interested in competing in one of his competitions or just want to know more about it. If you've probably seen Tap Cancer out somewhere like I have, and maybe you want to know more about the organization. So we'll jump into it. Thank you guys for being here as always. Big thanks to our sponsors for helping support the podcast. Charlotte's Web CBD. If you guys that haven't checked them out before, check them out at their website at charlottesweb.com. That's the website. And again, they're one of the old school CBD products, or one of the old school CBD companies out there. They were making it before everybody, had a CBD company. And again, they hold their products to a very high standard of third-party testing, which not a lot of companies do. And they also have a lot of different products, everything from the traditional CBD products to CBN products, which is a different cannabinoid. That one they typically use related to sleep. There's other things that they have, like functional mushroom products, a ton of different stuff, balms and rubs. Everything else, I like the product. I've used it off and on for years. Again, I just as a person, I just tend to like cycle off of things periodically, just to be like, okay, except for my thyroid medication. my thyroid medication has been pretty consistent. I'm not getting off that. That's whatever. But with most supplements, even like protein, sometimes I'll just I will stop using protein powder for just a little bit, I don't know why. Just that's my person that I am. But again, been using the products for a long time. I find value in them. Typically for me, it's more of a recovery thing. So it's one of the things that I have in my tool belt for helping improve my recovery as an older grappler. So I mean, again, as we get older, it's just the nature of the beast. Father Time plays this cruel trick on you where you're smarter, you're more intelligent, you're more knowledgeable, but your body doesn't work like it used to. You've been losing a step. You can't quite explain what it is, but your body just doesn't function like it used to. And you're snap, crackling, popping, getting out of bed. You don't sleep as well, the whole deal. And so CBD for me seems to assist in those functions, everything from rest and relaxation and just recovery in general. So I take it with bedtime, and I tend to find value there. If you want to try it out for a month and see what you think, go to their website at charlottesweb.com. You can get whatever product you want from them. Try it out for a month, and you can save 30% with the promo code Chewjitsu30 for 30% off the order. Also, thanks to our buddies over at Epic Roll. EpicRollBJJ.com is the website. They make a ton of terrific products. All of my Jiu-Jitsu rash guards currently are being made through them. Again, really good quality stuff. And again, all of the stuff that he makes on his website, great quality stuff, good designs. And again, they're a jiu-jitsu company that's made by jiu-jitsu practitioners, black belts who train, the whole deal, opposed to, say, there are some companies out there that are, you may have seen them, I'm not going to name names, but a lot of times it's just kind of like they're making a buck. They're like, okay, hey, we researched this, and we're going to just try to squeeze some money out of these jiu-jitsu guys, and we could care less about supporting the community and everything else. We're just going to rake some dough in. But again, Matt is one of the founders, one of our friends, and he's been operating the company for a long time. And again, it's a cool company. So if you guys want to get some new gear, rash guard shorts, t-shirts, gis, whatever it might be, check them out at epicrollbjj.com. The website is Chewjitsu20 for 20% off the order. If you guys want to support the podcast directly, you can roll on over to our Patreon at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. I'm sure you know how this works. There's some different perks that we offer, some different content exclusives that we offer, a bunch of different stuff that we offer. And in return, you become a member of our Patreon. You get access to those perks, and you're supporting the podcast directly. It's a win-win, right? You're listening to the podcast every week, you're supporting us, and it's for a very inexpensive price. That's the deal. If you want to check out the perks to see what's going on there, go to patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast to get more info. Also, guys, if you want to get better in jiu-jitsu faster, it's very important for you to have focus. This is something I was just at a Chris Wojcik seminar, and even I bought one of his books afterwards. I was reading through his book, and in the book, and from talking to him, one of the clear, distinct shifts mentally that he went through with his training was being very focused with his training rather than coming in to win. That doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but it is a big deal. And we even talk about that with John in just a minute about kind of this idea of winning and losing, right? Just in the gym. And so, it's one of those things where a lot of us at some point or other, maybe you're doing this now, we get to the stage where we just love the hard, grueling, brutal training that a lot of times is kind of aimless. You step into the gym, you don't even know what you're doing there. You're just kind of like, I want to go hard. I want to train hard. And you have those great training sessions that leave you full of endorphins that, make you feel like you really did something. But for some reason, you're just not getting better fast enough, or you don't feel like you're getting better as fast as you would like, or as fast as the hard work that you're putting into it would sort of merit. And a big thing that he was talking about in his book, and he actually talked about it at the seminar a little bit, was being very focused on what he's doing, opposed to just trying to win a round. And a lot of times, when you're training, you may not win, air quotes, the round, but if you're focused on something very specific, there's a lot of variables that you could measure as success, right? So let's say if I'm working from half guard as an example, if my goal in the gym that day is to sweep from half guard, if I simply off balance this person, right? Oh, well, that was a win today. I off balance someone, right? That's a move in the right direction. I can build off of that, opposed to, well, I didn't sweep them, so it was a loss. Well, no. There's little variables there. There's things that we can look for success in that aren't necessarily the big thing. And so anyway, with that said, one of the things that I give away on my website is my ebook called Focus Jiu-Jitsu. It also comes with a video if you want to watch it instead of read it. And it gives you 12 different strategies on how to basically implement more focus during your open rolling. A lot of people don't have situational training in their gym in any real fashion. Their coach doesn't bake it into the training. It's like they do technique and then they just open roll. It's fine. It's not a big deal. But if you actually want to get more from that open rolling and those open mats you go to, it would be really smart of you to be very focused with your training. And if you're an older grappler, it's almost essential because of the fact that you don't have 5, 6, 7 days a week that you can train just 2 days a week, or 2 days and everything else like a young person. You got 2, 3 days a week, maybe. You got to be dialed in. Like, what are you there to do? And that's how you get better at jiu-jitsu a little bit faster, with making the most of the training time. If you want to get the ebook and then get my daily email, you can get more details at my website at chewjitsu.net/join, JOIN. Check it out. All right, guys, with all that said, let's talk to John from Tap Cancer Out. So, bro, we'll just jump right into it, man. Mm-hmm. I don't know the story. I'm sure you've said it more than a couple times, but you know what I mean? Like when you're on these podcasts and stuff. But I still think it's interesting because, like, like a lot of times people get into these sort of silos of like information and they hear that one thing, whatever. But how did you get started in jiu-jitsu?
So the year was 2008.
As the story goes.
I played volleyball. That was my sport through high school and college. And I actually went back to college for my master's degree, my MBA. And so I was able to continue to play volleyball, which was wonderful. And then I got my degree. I was working at the university at the time, got my degree in 2007. But after that, it was kind of hard to continue to play volleyball outside of the collegiate ecosystem. It's not really as simple as some other sports like basketball. You can go play pickup basketball anywhere, but it's really hard to do that with volleyball. So I did like 1 year with a men's team out of Boston, but I was in Connecticut. It was far. It was hard. So I was really looking for what like my next sport was going to be. I was into the UFC as like a fan, but I had no interest in getting punched in the face. I just kind of wanted to work out like they did. I was also simultaneously getting bored of just like going to the gym by myself and lifting. And, I loved the team aspect of all team sports that I played growing up. And to have that like taken away and then having no team anymore. And like, I wanted a sport where I could be part of a team, but when it came time to compete, I didn't need 5 other guys, 2 of which are middle hitters. One is a set. Like in volleyball, there's specific disciplines to the positions as well. So you need like a specific set of players. And if one of them drops out, now you can't just find anybody. You need to find somebody who plays that position. It was like a pain in the butt. So it was like, with jiu-jitsu, it scratched the itch of sort of being MMA adjacent. It was an amazing workout. I had a team, but when it came to competing, I could just sign on the dotted line and go compete. I didn't need anybody. I didn't even need a coach. So it allowed me the freedom to like compete without all the restrictions that like team sports might have. And so it, I still didn't know what I was getting into. And 2008 is not that long ago, but there weren't a lot of gyms in Connecticut at the time. It was basically, am I going to pick this gym that's a half hour that way or this gym that's a half hour that way? And so I just kind of randomly picked and ended up at a gym called Ultimate MMA in New Haven, Connecticut. And off I went. I had no wrestling background. I was not like a natural at jiu-jitsu. I had a major imposter syndrome. It was really hard. You didn't get a lot of easing into the program as white belts do now. I think a lot of school, and I don't really fault anybody for this, but school owners didn't understand like customer churn and how important white belts are to like keep
beginner
them.
classes.
Exactly. No, we had none of that. And it was almost like, this white belt's in this class. And so like I got the crap beat out of me. Getting my black belt was obviously amazing, but getting my blue belt might have been more important to me because I lasted, basically through jiu-jitsu boot camp, like going from white to blue. The white belt was terrible. It was just really hard and you're losing all the time. No one's letting you work, and they're doing all these submissions that are totally illegal now. Like it was just a different time. And I didn't quit. I just kept going. I didn't, it was what I was doing. It was my thing. I had nothing else to do. I mean, I could have always gone back to volleyball, obviously, but like, no, this was my thing. I was committed to it. I was paying a membership. I was going to go. And I just kept going. And competing was also really interesting too. I was terrified of it. Whereas with all other team sports, I would be so excited before like my baseball games and in volleyball tournaments and things like that. I was crapping my pants before jiu-jitsu tournaments. I was mad at myself for signing up. But as soon as it was done, I was like, where's the next tournament? Where's the next tournament?
Weird how that works, isn't it? Right? Like you think of the because a lot of us, it's later on it becomes more manageable, but early on when you get into these one-on-one competition sports where it's combat sports related, right? And you're beating each other up basically, it's nerve-wracking. And you question yourself, like when you're going through this, like this whole process emotionally, like, why am I doing this? The day of, like you said, you're going to the bathroom constantly, trying not to crap yourself. You go out there and you go through this whole ordeal that doesn't mean anything to anybody anywhere else. It literally, you're a white belt signing up. It changes nothing in your life, but you had to put so much effort into it. And then as soon as it's over, you're like, that was a lot of fun. I don't really know why it was a lot of fun, but I want to do it again.
Win or loss, win or lose. I survived. That's right. And I can do it again. Yeah. It was always this crazy cyclical thing of like trying to find the next tournament and then signing up and then being like, ugh, and then showing up and then being jealous of the kids who are already done with their divisions and they're leaving and they've got their belts on their shoulder. And I'm like, oh man, I wish I could just follow them right back to the car and leave. So yeah, it was very strange. And it was a little easier as I got up into the higher belts. I mean, the butterflies obviously never went away. But just more of an understanding that everybody was dealing with it. It wasn't just me. But yeah, it was very interesting experience in the competition scene.
Tell me about you kind of mentioned something about imposter syndrome. What was that from exactly, and how is that something you kind of conquered?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure everybody can relate to this in jiu-jitsu, even as you progress through the belts. A lot of times you get your belt and you're like, okay, am I even ready to have gotten this belt? Now I'm at the bottom of the totem pole. I'm going to get destroyed by all the other guys and girls that are at this belt. But especially, through white belt, back in the mid to late 2000s, no one was really like holding your hand. And it was trial by fire. And yeah, I mean, we weren't like, nowadays there's so much sort of thought and strategy goes into it, and this like eagerness to share knowledge. And especially when I visit academies, some of my like the favorite element of that for me is just when we sit there and like talk about different things. Like, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this entry? Did you? Yeah, I learned this from, like when back then, like if my triangle was terrible, the person I was putting it on was not going to help me fix it. They were just like, waiting for the next round and then going, like if I asked a question to my instructor or instructors, they would certainly help, but there wasn't this desire to like help people gain, more knowledge and this sharing of knowledge, and even the access to knowledge outside of what you were learning in your academies. There was no BJJ Fanatics. You had to get the DVDs, and then, can I borrow your DVD? I want to watch this Damian Maya DVD and Noguera DVD. And like, yeah, so it was like harder to even access it. So it just felt like there was a lot of gatekeeping. And so I was limited to what the move of the day in class. And so it just felt like I was progressing really slowly, and after, 3 months, 6 months, it was like, man, I thought I would be better, but I'm still getting killed. Little did I know I'd still get killed all the way up through black belt. I'm still getting killed. So that never changes. But yeah, it's, and then like my blue belt came out of nowhere, and I was like, I didn't even know I was close. And now I'm a blue belt, and now I can't fight in white belt divisions anymore. Now I'm at the bottom of the totem pole. Now I have this whole different type of feeling about my progress. Like, I'm very happy that I got the blue belt, but now, all these other blue belts have been training longer than me. And so it was just, yeah, again, as we talk about things being cyclical in jiu-jitsu, yeah, it was a wild journey.
Being that you run a competition, just like watching the jiu-jitsu gyms, there were a lot of practices that, we look back on and go, well, that was dumb. That was stupid. Or what a disaster that was. I can think of lots of examples of this, but what I'm about to ask you, but, looking back at some of the competitions that you went to, were there some crazy disastrous experiences that you saw sort of when you were looking at it? Like, I'll give you a quick example. Like, I remember competing at the Arnold Classic in 2004.
Yeah.
The tournament was all over the place. I remember that my division ended up running like 3 hours late. I think I was competing around 6. And then I competed in my division, and then there was the absolute for the white belt, which was somewhere around like 11 to 12 at night. Somewhere it was like really late. And then I remember they were like, hey, show up tomorrow because we're going to open the doors at 10. And then they got there at like, I think it was 11:30 or 11:45, and they opened the doors. I mean, it was just a complete disaster.
Yes.
Which obviously I don't think would fly too well today. So
yeah. So right. No, it wouldn't fly today. And some of my all my anxiety for all of these events is in how on time we are and how efficiently we're running through everything, because I experienced the inefficiencies of jiu-jitsu tournaments. And yeah, like, certainly before Smooth Comp and all of that, you had no idea like really when your division was going to go, and you're listening for your name, and you've got your like cards that you like hand in to the table. But I will say, like, I have, and so tournaments are certainly way better across the board. I think, some of them still like run really late and things like that. But the expectations, I mean, I've noticed this from parents and instructors and competitors and such, of how efficient your tournament needs to be has certainly gotten a lot higher. I've bit my tongue because, I don't want to be a boomer, but, sometimes I want to be like, back in the day, these things ran like 5 hours late. I'm sorry that we're 10 minutes late right now, or they're getting mad at us because we're running ahead of time. And, like the guys are getting there, and I'm like, hey, I know this was like your DQ time. You're only showing up like 5 minutes before your DQ time, but you need to get out there on the mats because we're running an hour ahead of schedule. And they're like all frazzled. So yeah, though, events have gotten a lot more efficient in that way. But some of my fondest memories are from, those old school tournaments. And like, there would be a random super fight with like 2 UFC guys right in the middle, and everyone's sitting on the mats. And like, I was there at the UFC Expo Grapplers Quest when I forget who he was fighting, but Ryan Hall did a super fight and had this like path to the back move that no one had ever seen before. And we were all around the mats, and like Randy Moss came down. Like things that like don't happen anymore. It's just, it was a different type of culture back then. And Yeah, a lot has changed. So it's improved. And yes, I went through. I mean, there was I'm not going to name any names, but there was a tournament where the person at the table got so frazzled that they were like, "You guys," they gave us a pen and an empty bracket and made the competitors write the names into the bracket. I was like, what is going on here? Like, I guess I'm gonna be right here. You want to be over here? It was wild. It was wild. But yeah, we like people, you need to respect people's time, and so we've gotten a whole lot better with all of that stuff. So I mean, and I don't want anyone to ever have to experience that at our tournaments. So that was one of the sticking points from day one. Like, we have to be efficient and on time, and trim the fat, and yeah. So
there is a side to it, though, and like I said, maybe this is the boomer in us both talking. Like, like when I see people getting ready for a competition, like I'm a dad, I have a lot of stuff going on the plate, totally understand. But when you sign up for a competition, like, you just sort of have to square away, like, at least like the majority of that day for that thing, right? Like, it's just the way it is. Like, like I don't know, sometimes people expect they're going to go in there like it's a jiu-jitsu class. I'm going to go in there, compete, get home by like noon. Like, no, man, like it's a whole day thing. Just like block away the time. You're not leaving anytime soon. Just deal with it and be ready for it. You were talking about like competitions in the culture, and you were talking about the pro fighters competing. I remember one of the comps I did in 2005. It was a North Carolina tournament. It was called like I think they had it like the Budweiser World Cup or something, whatever they called it, right? Like, it sounds real or whatever. But Jeff Munson and there were some other guys that were competing. And like I said, everybody was just around the mats, and the mats were literally brand new puzzle mats, like thin puzzle mats that you get, and they're sticky. They have no slide or no grip on them, so you shoot and they like, you don't slide on them, you sort of stop. And they didn't have anything underneath of them. They're on this gym floor. So I remember there were several times where like guys would shoot and the mat would move. You know what I mean? Like, because they're generating so much power out of their legs that they're moving this mat across the floor. And I remember Jeff Munson was shooting on this guy, and the mat moved out. The guy sprawled and he banged his knees on the ground. Anyway, it was but nonetheless, it was a wild time. And I remember at the same time, we're all just piled up around watching.
Do you remember, Chewy, we had that one in Indiana, and there was like in a lunchroom, and they had to move like literally like lunch tables out of the way. Yeah. I was like, I started around the same. So a lot of the stuff you're sharing, I started 2008 as well. I didn't wrestle really in any capacity. I played soccer. So it was like the same kind of upbringing. My first beginner class was me and the coach, and there wasn't anybody else in there. And then we had a couple white belts, and they usually throw us all together. And yeah, same thing. Like, they didn't really give you much. If you're rolling against people, they don't give you a whole lot. And it was interesting. It was a fun time. But like, I think that in some ways it kind of hardens you a little bit, right? Because like you said, I made it through this crucible of getting a blue belt, and then you're kind of a little bit not really you're on the other side of white belt, of course. So you're kind of got some experience, some skill. You can kind of see yourself in some of these white belts, kind of trying to struggle through it. But I think it shows you personally, like, what you don't want and what worked well, what didn't work well. And then when you structure a tournament or an environment for people to compete in, I think you make it to what you feel like would be ideal, and comes from all that experience.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure we're going to get into it, but when I started Tap Cancer Out and we hosted our first tournament, I was just a blue belt. Like, it wasn't like I was some seasoned competitor, black belt, own my own gym. Like, it had sponsors, and like, I had done a handful of tournaments. I had done as many as I could, but it's not like I had done a ton. I understood how brackets worked and sports and all of that stuff. But I was naive enough to think that I could do it. And looking back now, like, thank God I was that naive, but man, yeah, I was naive.
Naive, but sometimes a fresh set of eyes can be a good thing, right? Because you're coming into it from a person where, you have this NBA background, you're coming into it from a different sport background. You have a fresh set of eyes, because, it happens where people get in their little niche and they get so insulated that they can't see outside of it. And they're like, this is just how things are done, right? So like, when you get a fresh set of eyes that looks at like a jiu-jitsu class, you're like, hey, why aren't you guys offering beginner programs so that these people don't wash out, and so you can actually run a business which allows you to support them for the long term and make them better, which is the ultimate mission? Why are you just beating the shit out of these people? This really doesn't help you any way possible. So, I don't know, this is just the way we've always done it, right? So sometimes that naivete can help. Going to it though, how did you start the tap cancer out, right? So you come in, you're this naive, wide-eyed blue belt who decides he's going to run a tournament. How did that whole thing come about?
Yeah, so it was only 2010, but a friend of mine had so we all grew up in Massachusetts. He had moved out to San Diego, and he started a company. At the time, it was called Stay Classy. It then turned to just Classy, but they were hosting charity events and doing pub crawls, and it was really about like getting young people involved in philanthropy. And they eventually realized that there was like no good fundraising software. And so they evolved into an actual fundraising software company. It's still the same. It's the fundraising software we use now. So we've been using it since day one. But they actually hosted an event called the Classy Awards. It was this black tie affair, and it was just sort of think like Emmys, Tonys or whatever, but for philanthropy. So charity of the year, volunteer of the year. It had never been done. They were just flying by the seat of their pants, but they thought it would not only recognize some of the amazing work that was being done at nonprofits across the world, but also be a good marketing tool to get nonprofits, looking at them and their software and things like that. So I went out for, I don't know if it was year 2 or year 3, just to support them, just because it was San Diego. I didn't have any kids yet, black tie, we all got dressed up, and I knew the founder, so I would get into everything. And sort of a very selfish way to go out there. But then, I was meeting all of these people, and, I'd be like, what do you do? Oh, I run a nonprofit. We build schools in Tanzania. Oh, what do you do? I run a nonprofit, and we mobilize veterans to help during natural disasters. What do you do? I'm a communications manager at an ad agency. Like, it really fell flat. And I was like, woof, I'm not doing anything to help the world. So literally during the event, I'm sitting in the chair and half listening to what's going on, but I'm like, I need to think of something. I'm not getting out of this chair until I think of something, and I was knee deep in jiu-jitsu at the time. And I was like, I hate cancer. We had lost my nephew in 2006 to cancer. He was around 8 months old at the time. So it was a difficult time. He was basically born with it. So, and I knew that I wanted to do something in that space, but maybe I could do it through jiu-jitsu. In another thing that had been sticking in my mind in 2007, this is before I found jiu-jitsu, but after my nephew Michael had passed, my wife and I did a half marathon for the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. And they have a program called Team in Training, where if you sign up to go into one of these races, it can be a 5K, half marathon, and you commit to fundraising a certain amount. We each had to fundraise $1,000. They will give you all these resources to train, obviously, but also they get you a hotel room the night before. They're paying for your bib and entry to the race. We have a VIP tent for all the fundraisers, and this just like elevated experience as a runner in this. And it's for a good cause. And we're all wearing these purple pennies with our names on it. And so they have a volunteer at every mile marker. Just anyone who's wearing a purple penny, they'll yell out your name, they'll read it on your shirt, and they'll cheer for you. So we had cheerleaders at every mile as well. It was just really cool. And we trained, and my wife, did not like the training, but she did it. And we both finished the half marathon, and we never did it again because we hate running. And that's the problem with modern, philanthropy. If you don't golf, swim, run, or bike, what active fundraising things are you going to do? There's Swim Across America and Pan Mass Challenge, and obviously all of the fundraising things that go around marathons. But I don't like to do any of those things. I like to do jiu-jitsu. So but I want to help through jiu-jitsu, but there was nothing there at the time. There was no outlet in that respect. So like, maybe I could do it. I did not know that we were going to host tournaments. That really did not come about for years. We try to think of like what we're going to do. We came up with a logo and started selling shirts, and we got a table at this MMA event, Cage Titans in Massachusetts. They let us have a table, but we sold like 2 shirts. Like, it, you know, we didn't resonate with like the MMA scene. And after that night, you know, I was super depressed. We had driven 3 hours. Like, we had spent way more money on gas and parking than we actually raised. I was like, you know, we have to figure, like, I'm not an MMA guy. I'm a jiu-jitsu guy. Whatever tap cancer out's going to be, it has to be truly jiu-jitsu. And like, it can't be like ancillary or, you know, MMA or whatever. We have to find out how to be authentically jiu-jitsu. And so eventually we were like, well, why don't we just host our own events and sort of borrow a little bit of the model that we learned at Leukemia Lymphoma Society and just apply that to jiu-jitsu. So yeah, if you raise $250, you can compete for free. That's great, because jiu-jitsu is super expensive to compete on any type of regular basis. Back when I played volleyball, it was $20 a guy and you're playing all day. You know, now it's like, yeah, 70, 80, 100, 120, go to an IBJJF, it's 175, 200, and you might get 2 or 3 matches. So it's this completely opposite model than you're used to. So yeah, I mean, competing for free, that could be really, you know, compelling. And then what are the rest of the perk levels going to be? This is one of our fundraising t-shirts. If you raise $400, you get a fundraising t-shirt. The more you raise, the more stuff you get. And then, so that's all leading up to the event. So we can create all this impact leading up to the event. And then let's just host a kick-ass jiu-jitsu tournament in the way that I always wished jiu-jitsu tournaments would be run. So like, let's make them on time. You know, let's make sure like the mats are nice and comfortable, and the staff is nice, and just all of those types of things. So that's how we started. And in 2012, we hosted our first event in Connecticut. I thought we would, if we raised like $5,000, that was my goal. We ended up raising 20. And that's when I was like, oh, wow, I think we have a thing here, because we had never raised, you know, we had sold some shirts, but we had not come anywhere near that. I was way in the hole on my credit card with how much we'd been spending on Tap Cancer Out. And so we were able to give Leukemia Lymphoma Society close to $30,000 that year. So off we went. And then everyone was like, are you going to do it next year? Oh man, I don't know. I never even thought of that. I was only thinking about this year. So I guess so. Let's do it next year. And let's add a second one in Massachusetts, which is where I'm from. So then every year we just kept adding more and more. And that's how the story goes.
What's some of the challenges that you face with starting a nonprofit in the jiu-jitsu space? Like, what are some of the hurdles you have to, because I mean, that's a little bit of, most people run, bike, walk, whatever it is, but you know, jiu-jitsu is kind of a subset of the population. Not a lot of us, you know, not a lot of people really want to do that, what we do essentially, and it doesn't seem very inviting to them.
You know, there was something about jiu-jitsu where in the competition side of things, you know, a lot of my jiu-jitsu friends are people that I met for the first time when we slapped and bumped and competed in a tournament. And then afterwards, you're like, oh man, that armbar was sick. You know, you got to show me those details, you know. Oh, you know, I've got 2 kids. You got 2 kids? Yeah, I got 2 kids. You know, like, and then you just start to get to know people. And especially like, you know, through Tap Cancer Out, it's crazy. Like, there's guys I competed against at white belt, and now they are owners of academies that bring their students to my tournaments. And it's just like this wild evolution of things. But I was like, there was, you know, jiu-jitsu obviously has a lot of issues in masculinity and bro-ism and stuff like that. But I was seeing some of the best sportsmanship in jiu-jitsu than any other sport. Like, I got in more fights in volleyball than I have in jiu-jitsu, like shoving matches with opponents and stuff. Like, you know, my 8th grade basketball coach and a parent got in a fight once, like right behind the bench, like, you know, and you got jiu-jitsu parent stories as well. And I know a fight just broke out at a Hawaii tournament, but in general, like, it was this weird, I was just meeting a lot of people, and I was like, man, you know, there's a lot of great people in this community. I think we can do some really good things in not only make an impact in the world, but more importantly, show the world what the jiu-jitsu community is about. They just assume we're all trying to get into the UFC someday. And that is like not it at all. You know, most of us are just part-time grapplers who are trying to get in shape and, you know, find a community and meet people and learn something new. And we're not, you know, medal chasers, and, you know, we don't want to be MMA fighters or anything like that. So I wanted to change the narrative as well. That was just as important to me as the impact that we create. I wanted people to be like, wait a minute, a jiu-jitsu tournament did this? Like, the jiu-jitsu community has raised and donated $7.75 million. Yeah, jiu-jitsu, not hockey, not basketball, jiu-jitsu. And that's a huge badge of honor for me. Your question about like the challenges. So I felt like that was in our favor, that we were going to have all these wonderful people fundraising for us and motivated to show people what such a misunderstood sport can do. Like, we're going into work with black eyes and cauliflower ear, and people are like, oh, did you get hurt in your karate thing? And it's like, you know, like, it's, you know, once you leave the confines of your jiu-jitsu school, you know, everybody thinks what you do is weird. So, you know, now we get to say, yeah. And I just competed in a jiu-jitsu tournament, which also raised $300,000. And so I knew that the community could do this. I knew it. The challenges for us, you know, number one was just scaling while we all have, you know, myself and my wife have full-time jobs, starting a family, all that sort of stuff. You know, we took our lumps with learning how to run tournaments. I hand bracketed the first 3 tournaments, like literally sat there and wrote out every bracket on a piece of paper, which are all crap once people show up overweight or misgendered or all this sort of stuff. And like, why did you sign up for the female division? You're a male. And so like, we'd have to erase and rewrite and crumple up and throw them out. And then we hired a company that had brackets and stuff. So like we're still elevating our game to this day. But we also, and this is another challenge that we'll always face for our entire existence, you know, we have to be 2 companies. We have to be a tournament organization. We have to be as good, if not better, than all the other tournaments out there. We have to understand what Jiu-Jitsu World League is doing. We have to understand what the IBJJF is doing. And there's a lot of tournament organizers, you know, the guys at Grappling Industries saved our asses when our trailer was stolen. But Corey at Grappling X, we used all of his stuff when we first went out to California. So there's a lot of exchange of information there of how we run tournaments, because we all want to run them better. But I have to keep up with all of them. But we also have to be a nonprofit. So I have all of the nonprofit stuff that we have to go through. We get audited every year. You know, all of like the financials are super complex, and we have a part-time CFO that helps with all that. So yeah, we have to basically run 2 organizations simultaneously. And so that can be challenging, obviously.
So when you were picking a charity or charities, how did you go about doing that? Because, you know, I would think we were talking about this before. You know, there's sometimes you see these numbers or something like that, and you know, you find out what actually goes into supporting the people that you someone's like, hey, do you want to support people with X illness or condition? Sure, I want to do that. Here's your buck. And then you find out that, like, you know, 3 pennies of that dollar go to the rest of it's through administrative costs and marketing and things like that to raise more money or to do whatever, right? You know, and there's obviously costs that are going to be incurred. People need to be paid their money, but at the end of the day, we still want to try to get something back to those people. So when you guys were sort of choosing different charities or organizations to partner with, how did you go about that, and why did you choose the ones that you did?
So one of the biggest surprises was how hard it would be to get our very first beneficiary. Like, I was emailing like the American Cancer Society headquarters were right down the street from where I worked in Connecticut, and I couldn't get them to like respond to anything I was sending them. Now, obviously I wasn't able to like give them numbers that would, you know, get them excited. You know, I didn't even know how much we were going to raise, but we couldn't host the tournament without a beneficiary. I knew that was a linchpin of what we were going to do. And, you know, so a lot of phone calls and emails went unanswered. And there was obviously, or at least I assumed, there was a concern about the fact that we were a jiu-jitsu nonprofit. They just didn't understand like what that was. They thought it was going to be cage fighting. They didn't, in the same way that how long it took for MMA to be legal in all the states. Like, people are just afraid of, combat sports and things like that. So they were just like, for $5,000, $10,000, let's just stay away from it. I guess. I don't know. No one's ever said it to my face because I couldn't get anyone to even answer my phone calls. But the Leukemia Lymphoma Society Connecticut chapter was also down the street from us in Connecticut. So I literally rode right over there and was like, hey, this is my idea. My nephew had leukemia. It is really important to me. In the local chapters, which, just focus their funding on supporting on cancer supportive care and research in their community. And we were hosting a Connecticut tournament. So like, what better than working with the Connecticut chapter of Leukemia Lymphoma Society? And so they were like, hell yes, let's go. Cause we, everybody wants to give to just like general Leukemia Lymphoma Society, the overarching thing. They never come to the local chapter. So they were really excited to work with us. And that was great. And then when we had our Massachusetts tournament the next year, we were able to bring in the Massachusetts chapter as well. So those funds went to Massachusetts, the Connecticut went to Connecticut, and so on, and so forth. And we were able to work with them to carve out basically, whatever our gift is going to be. We want 50% to go to this program that you have, which was, like travel care for folks dealing with cancer. Some of the biggest things are just difficulties are getting to the care that you need. It takes gas. You have to eat on the road. You need hotel rooms and all of those things. And then we also supported grants that they had as well. So, we were able to choose those. So in the beginning, it was hard. We now have 11 beneficiaries. And so the way that we have selected them has obviously had to change. And we have had over the years, there are beneficiaries that have come and gone. Some haven't been as good of a partner as we wanted them to. None of them did we ever feel like they weren't using our money properly, because they all have checks and balances to where we can assign exactly where our funding is going to go, down to like with St. Baldrick's and with Alex's Lemonade Stand. I was able to pick the doctor that would receive the grant funding, like, because doctors are giving, they're basically saying, I want to research this, will you fund it? And then they have to get selected. So we were able to select doctors in the regions where we're having tournaments. So I was able to actually call the doctor. We had it like just like this on a Zoom or whatnot, and basically tell him that his grant was getting funded. And that was really, really special. It was under the guise of it was going to be something else, but and then I said, hey, John from Tap Cancer Out, we're funding this grant and you're going to get it. And he was
so it was a surprise to the doctor.
Oh my God. Yes. He had no idea.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's fun.
He had no idea. So he had just, applied and maybe he was like selected as a finalist. I'm not sure, but so we were able to say like, I want to fund this grant, this grant, this grant. And then once we fund them, they are obligated to report back to us on a fairly regular basis how the research is going. Now, I don't understand a lot of the words that they put in these things, obviously, but we get it. We get all the information, and it's interesting to hear, how all of these things are going. But with so many beneficiaries now, one of the most important things was to address a larger the larger cancer journey. There's so much, I've learned so much. You don't realize how much you don't know until you get into the space. And I have not personally had cancer, so I have not had to go through it, but understanding like what a parent goes through when they're caring for their child, what a sibling goes through when their other sibling has cancer. Like, Alex's Lemonade Stand has a program just for siblings. It's called Super Sibs, to support the siblings whose sibling has cancer. And so like, that's a struggle as well. So just learning about what the larger cancer journey looks like, how they need support after they had cancer, you know, like what does survivorship look like? Your life has changed forever after you've had cancer. You feel like your body has betrayed you. You can't do things that you used to do. You might not even have a certain limb that you used to have because of cancer. So how do you continue, and how can we support them? And so, yeah, so obviously a lot of our funding goes to a research, but it goes to a lot of other things. Camp Sunshine and First Ascents are both programs that offer basically experiences for young adults and children going through cancer. First Ascents is outdoor experiences. And Camp Sunshine is in Maine, and that's for families with kids with life-threatening diseases, mostly cancer. But allowing them just the ability to connect with other parents whose child have the same type of cancer that you have or your child has, so that you can learn from each other. And because it's very lonely.
Sure.
In that, you know, like, well, my child has this very specific type of blood cancer. How am I ever going to talk to any other parent who knows what I'm going through? You can talk to other parents, but yeah, it's mind-boggling. So we're very excited to have such great partners that support so many different types of cancer, number one. And we still don't support anywhere near all of the cancers out there. So we have a variety of types of cancers, but also types of programs that they offer as well. So yeah, it's really interesting meeting in all of these organizations and learning what they do. They have to go through an RFP process with us to outline exactly where the money's going to go. And, you know, we get all the checks and balances and stuff, but you know,
quite a process. And like, you're dealing with a lot of different people, a lot of like, almost like you said, you have two companies in one. You have a nonprofit and a jiu-jitsu tournament kind of company.
Yeah.
Obviously things come up, there's overwhelm, there's a lot to look at. What's your process? And it could be from the business mindset, like kind of what you've learned. What's your process of like attacking a problem or a situation, problem solving, and kind of getting to a solution? And that could be, you know, with techniques, it could be with business, with life, whatever that is, because there's a lot that you kind of deal with, a lot of stuff coming at you. So how do you decide this person gets the funding, or this is the way I want to run a tournament, or we have a fire here that needs to be put out? How do you kind of process all that?
So I am, you know, in the beginning, it was just myself and my wife, and really I was taking all of the brunt. Like, I was the one who understood jiu-jitsu. My wife does not train. She's brilliant, but she doesn't train. So a lot of like the figuring out of the jiu-jitsu stuff and the tournament stuff fell on my plate. Now we are a staff of 5 full-timers plus 3 part-timers, which includes my mother-in-law, who fulfills all the merch orders that come in. That's my mother-in-law picking, packing, and shipping them. But actually having a team, and 2 of those full-timers were hired this year. We were just a team of 3, myself, my wife, and our academy relationship manager, Sarah. So we were lean and mean for many years, and we still are. But nowadays, you know, when things pop up and we're having issues, it is so wonderful to have a team to turn to and be like, we're dealing with this. We, you know, what can we do? Like, let's get some ideas. No idea is a bad idea. Let's figure this out together. It is, you know, people not make comments, but like the idea of working full time with your wife is not everyone's cup of tea. It's a blessing for me to have someone that I know is 1000% bought in. Not that I think any of my other staff members aren't, but someday they'll move on to bigger and better things and stuff. But she's in it for the long haul. This is her baby too. And I know that I can trust her fully. If I ask her to do something, I only have to ask once, and then I never have to even think about it. It can go out of my brain and it can be on her plate, and I know she's going to like kill it. So to have like that person by your side is wonderful. I think the culture that we have built at Tap Cancer Out, it's really important to make sure that like the vibes are good and that everybody is moving towards the same goal, and no one is afraid to ever ask for help or have questions. But we got to make sure that we execute and have each other's backs. We had at our Jacksonville tournament, we had an issue with a child who basically lost badly and hurt her arm. And the mother was very, very, very upset and was coming at me and yelling and screaming and like telling me to apologize to her child like multiple times. I did it once, but I said, I'm not going to do it again. I already apologized. And it was getting like very, very bad to the point where we were considering like calling security. I mean, we had security, but we were going to have to like ask her to leave. And it was like traumatizing to me. She's got like,
sure, it was for the kid too.
In front of him. Yeah. Yes. And her kid like wasn't all that concerned and like wasn't necessarily hurt. And if she was so hurt, why didn't you take her over to the medic? Like instead of bringing her over to me and then yelling at me, and her dad never said a word. It was all like really bizarre, but it was like so emotionally overwhelming for me that I had to like leave. But I wasn't going to leave. My staff, Sarah and Glenn, had to literally say, you need to leave. You need to leave. Like, this is not healthy for you. We will handle it. Just leave. So I literally walked. This was at University of North Florida. They have a Starbucks across the campus. I walked across campus and got everybody Starbucks, but it took a good 45 minutes to do so. But just them like saving me because I would have fallen on the sword. Like, I was not going to let her do that to anybody else. Yeah. And they had to save me from her. And, that was really the first time that I had seen them, like, they're always stepping up, but for them to like care about my well-being and all that was like super meaningful. So to have that team, I'm not really concerned about any problem that we run into. It's sort of like, okay, that happened. The whole Jocko saying of good, like, okay, Jiu-Jitsu World League dropped in on us this weekend. Good. How are we going to fix this? And a lot of the times when those things happen and we're able to pivot and switch and it ends up working out better than it did, that happens a lot. So we always try to say like, okay, this is happening for a reason. And we're going to come out better. So let's figure it all out.
Yeah. I'm always amazed, and I've been this way since I was younger. I was always amazed by watching some of the parents and the way that they go about conducting themselves at tournaments, because it's one thing to be very passionate about your kid and wanting to see your kid be successful at something and be safe. As a parent, everybody wants that, right? But you're aware of this. Your kids watch what you do far more than what you say.
Yep.
And when you're conducting yourself and you're flipping a lid and you're not conducting yourself with the same level of poise or control that you would probably want them to, you're signaling to them that like, hey, I say this, but this is all bullshit. Here's what we actually do. We scream and throw temper tantrums and as grown adults and stuff like that. And I always find that interesting that to see parents when they lose their, just lose their marbles. I've seen it a couple times at our competitions. It doesn't happen too often. Jiu-Jitsu parents generally, like, in comparison to some of the stuff that I've seen at like baseball games and stuff, Jiu-Jitsu parents are generally all right. Like, they're pretty good. Yeah. But every now and then you get something, and again, it could be just over the smallest little things, and it's like they lose their stuff over it, and it's I remember there was one guy that I was talking to once, and he's yelling, screaming, sure. And I'm listening to what he's saying, but at the same time, I'm looking down at his daughter. I'm like, huh. Yeah, okay. She's looking at him, and he's yelling at me, and I'm like, so this is the example you're saying? Cool, man. I'm like, all right, like whatever. We'll figure this out, but like. I'm like, I don't know. Like you said, I think you're making this more traumatizing for the kid by going nuts versus, hey, if we made a mistake, let's fix that stuff for you and we'll get it done. No problem at all, right? If someone messed up, well, let's fix it. No problem. But just an observation. No point in saying that. Just an observation.
That's a unique thing that you guys deal with for sure. Like with tournaments, safety's important, but it's a jiu-jitsu tournament. The whole point is to submit, your opponent, essentially. You're not trying to hurt them. Some tournaments, you have people have different intentions, but I would assume like a kind of a regional tournament like Tap Cancer Out that has like the purpose of it is like to just build, support for cancer victims and to fundraise. It's kind of like, I would say like maybe a different feel. Like, what do you think? Let me ask this. What's the feel? Like, what's the environment? What's the culture of a Tap Cancer Out tournament?
this is one of the biggest talking points and sort of things that we talk about internally. This idea of our tournaments being about, we use the phrase more than medals. We actually have a shirt that says more than medals. Mm-hmm. And I try to talk about it in the morning announcements and stuff like that. Like, hey guys, understand, this is a charity tournament. Like, listen, we got great referees. We got beautiful mats. Like, we got all the accoutrements that all these other tournaments do. Our medals are nice and big and heavy and gold and silver and bronze. Like, we have all of that sort of stuff. Your wins are going to show up on your smooth comp, which I know is so important to everybody to have their record up there. But just understand like what we're here for. That does get lost every once in a while, but also it doesn't get lost. You see some amazing interactions in good intentions and stuff like that. But so we've tried to think about our events and change them a little bit to be geared towards that idea of more than medals. So even little things like, we have a table with, we did like face paint for like kids, or a table with like spray on tattoos and interactive things where you can write the names of the people you're fighting for, and sort of like all of these, we always invite our beneficiaries anytime that they're local to a tournament to come so they can engage with the community as well. We're always trying to do those types of things to take the focus off of winning and losing. Obviously, all the perks that you get as a fundraiser have nothing to do with winning or losing. So you can get submitted in 60 seconds, but you're still walking out of there. You might have a backpack full of gear and a brand new gi that you've been waiting for. So that could be really cool. I actually, are you guys familiar with Savannah Bananas, like the baseball team? Okay. So I reached out to
kind of like the Globetrotters of. I've never seen.
He doesn't like that phrase, but
is that yes,
that is the best.
I've seen of them. I don't really know, but it's kind of like
he basically was like, let's change everything about baseball and like let's actually make it fun and interesting and not about like who wins and loses and like who cares about that. Let's just make it like fun. Baseball is boring. And so he bought, like, Savannah Bananas were a real team. They were a different name, but he changed it, and then he changed the whole thing. And I actually reached out to him with this question. I hunted down his email and sent them the question, like, jiu-jitsu is super competitive. Everybody cares about winning and medals and all that sort of stuff. How can I like adjust and make people realize what you made them realize about baseball and stuff? And he recorded a video in some like stadium, recorded a video and sent it back to me with his answer. And that was so, just the fact that he even responded to me shows what the Savannah Bananas were all about. Because I'm just a guy, and we're always trying to put the focus on the experience and celebrating the people that we are fighting for, that we are fighting in honor of, just to alleviate some of the nerves and some of like the seriousness of our tournaments. We're never going to get away from, people caring about like winning and losing and things like that. And I get it. I've competed in exactly one of my tournaments and I lost both my matches and I was pissed. Like I should have won at least one of them. Like I was mad, but you want to win and stuff like that. But we just want it to feel a whole lot different when you get there. And like, this is the one tournament where you're still getting out on the mats and doing your competitive jiu-jitsu and you can work your game. But I want it to be way more than that, even down to like, we get asked about the team awards in terms of like points and stuff. We don't do any of that. Like, I don't care what happens on the mats. I don't care who wins and loses. I don't care. I care about how much we fundraise and I care about people's experience. So we celebrate the top overall fundraiser, the top youth fundraiser, the top fundraising team, which is sometimes like 2 or 3 people. And then you'll have a school owner who's like, I brought 40 people to this tournament, but they didn't raise a dime. Like they all just, paid for their registration fee, which is fine. But I'm going to award the academy owners and the teams that are like, hey, before, no matter what happens at the tournament, it doesn't really matter. Before the tournament, we're all going to rally around this cause and we're going to fundraise and we're going to create a huge impact. And then we're going to go out there and just have fun and do jiu-jitsu. So we have to switch our model a little bit. It ruffles some feathers of the people who care about those other types of accolades, but so be it.
When you were running this tournament, and obviously you're still running it, but when you were running it, when did you reach maybe a moment? I mean, there's a lot of times moments, right, plural, but at least maybe a moment where you were like, okay, we're onto something here. We got something special here, because a lot of times you have these ideas, you go into it with this sort of uncertainty, and then you have this breaking point where all of a sudden you look around and you're going, okay, like we actually have something special here.
I knew that we had something special pretty early. And the Connecticut tournament grew relatively quickly, not as quickly as our tournaments grow now, just because we have way more awareness, but faster, they got bigger faster than I expected. The real tipping point was, when was I going to quit my job to do this full time? And I never thought I would do this full time, ever. And I famously said many times, like, I don't want to just be one of these guys that goes around the country and hosts tournaments all year. And, I'm going to have kids. I don't want to travel that much, like all that sort of stuff. So it was always going to be a part-time hustle for me, or so I thought. But once we got to like 11 tournaments and 13 tournaments, I didn't have any PTO to take for like normal family vacations. I was using them all on the Fridays that we would leave to go set up for tournaments and stuff like that. So obviously I was burning the candle at both ends. I was starting to withdraw a little bit from like work, and as my friends would move on to other jobs, I wasn't replacing them with new friends at work or whatever. I would just become, I would just sit in my office, which had no windows, and just like get my work done as fast as humanly possible, keep the door closed all day, and get it done quickly so that I can work on my tap cancer out stuff. And so eventually I talked to my boss and said, like, I think we can do this full time. We had to, figure out the tour model. Previously it was just hub and spoke. So like, we didn't have a truck, we didn't have a trailer. I would rent a U-Haul on Friday, drive to our storage facility, take everything out, put it in the truck, drive to wherever we were going. So like Connecticut to Philly or Connecticut to Buffalo, set up that night, host a tournament on Saturday, either drive back Saturday night or Sunday morning, unload everything in the storage facility, return the truck, and then I'm back to work on Monday. And then we would do that 6, 7, 8 times a year. But if it was going to be sustainable, we had to do it carnival style. We had to do like 8 or 9 consecutive weeks, 3 to 4 hours away from each other. And we would need a truck, we would need a trailer, like we'd have to like do it right. And so once we sort of mapped all that out, we actually got a grant from Starbucks for $25,000. It was like this contest, social media contest that they did, that we were one of many winners, not just one, but that allowed us to buy the truck. I like literally took that money right to the Ford dealership and bought a truck and the rest with the trailer or the Chevy dealership at that time. We have a Ford now, but yeah. And we just sort of like put those pieces into place. And then I told my boss that I was gonna leave, but not for 6 months. And I kind of only want to do this part-time, but I need to keep my benefits. So how can I work as little as possible, but not lose my benefits? And so they were super nice and allowed me to basically, I worked tap cancer out full-time on Monday and Friday and Saturday and Sunday. And then I was in the office Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. My pay was reduced, but I was able to keep my healthcare and all that stuff and my family's healthcare and whatnot. And then, yeah, on my birthday, June 30th of 2018 was my last day at my agency. And then the next day was the first day as a full-time employee at Tap Cancer Out. And the rest is history.
Nice.
What was that like? That feeling of doing that, something that you maybe had kind of a dream of.
Awesome. It was terrifying and awesome at the same time. But we also had, it was July, August. We were starting the fall tour in September. Registration was already open. The ball was already rolling, and
didn't have a whole lot of time to think about it. You're running.
We gotta go. Let's
get
going. Yeah. So yeah, I would go to Starbucks every day and sit there for 6, 7, 8 hours a day and have at it.
how do you choose a rule set to fit the environment you want? Like your rule sets and your tournaments, what do they look like, and how do you make them conducive to, having that kind of?
This answer is simpler than you would think, and I didn't really think about it. But when you're looking for referees, if you have like a random rule set that you think is the perfect jiu-jitsu rule set, but no one knows about it, you now have to teach all those referees your rule set, and they need to understand it. And they need to also not get mixed up with the tournament that they just worked last weekend, which has completely different rules. Like they're human beings. And they're trying to remember all these different rule sets and stuff. So we just follow the IBJJF rule set. So that way, if they say they know IBJJF rules, and certainly we have a lot of IBJJF referees that work those events, it's much easier for us to follow that. Like I don't care what gi color you wear, just try not to have mixed matching like tops and bottoms. But like we have people who love, like a lot of people in pink gis, things like that. I don't care about any of that stuff. They can wear rash guard under their gi, like a little bit like those types of things. And we have it all like written out in our rules, but like those are fine. But otherwise, it's just way simpler to follow a rule set that like previously exists, and go from there. That way, if you ask a new referee, if you quiz them on the IBJJF rule book and see how well they know it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times people sort of in their minds, or even like a lot of times if they've just been doing jiu-jitsu for a long time, most rule sets have some semblance, even like the ADCC rule set, it very closely like resembles the IBJJF rule set with, incentives in certain positions, things like that. So I think when people even watch like a sub only or like a CJI match or whatever, in their heads, they're still sort of grading it, viewing 100%. It from the lens of like the IBJJF sort of rule set,
Yeah, that must have been a 10-8 round. He passed his guard 3 times. He got knee on belly. They're still keeping score in their head.
Yeah.
And even like I had one fight to win match in my life, I'm keeping score in my head. And so like I'm up 12-2. I should definitely get this decision.
Right.
It all comes down to that. Yeah. That framework of winning a fight and what it means to score a point and advance the fight.
Yeah. So I was curious. So this is sheer curiosity. Earlier we were talking about different stuff, jiu-jitsu, whatever, and you sort of mentioned like the issues of like sort of maybe like some sort of masculinity / bro-ism issues in jiu-jitsu. I was just curious, like kind of like what your view is on that, right? Because it's an interesting topic, right, to discuss, because we do have a male. It's obviously there's a lot more women now, but it's still it skews very highly dudes.
Yes.
And there's good and bad parts about it, but just curious about what your thoughts are on that, if you have any. And if you don't want to talk about it, we don't have to talk about it.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Yeah, I mean, it is. I'm not surprised that there aren't as many women in jiu-jitsu as certainly other sports. It's really hard for anyone to start jiu-jitsu. First of all, it was really hard for me to start jiu-jitsu. I still get butterflies like walking into a gym where I know I outrank everybody by like 3 belts, but like, man, when you're a black belt, you got to have that dog in you every time, because everybody wants to go home and tell their partner that they tapped out a black belt and stuff. So even the white belts and blue belts are super dangerous. So like it's like a nerve. I don't feel the same way when I go and lift. I'm more just like annoyed that I have to go to the gym, but I'm not like afraid of the weights. I'm like afraid of some of these cats at jiu-jitsu and stuff. So to also be a woman who is probably smaller, who is probably not as strong, who knows what type of trauma they've had in their lives. Like it must be really difficult. I think the community has come a long way from what it used to be. And yeah, like a lot of the quiet stuff is being said out loud on social media. When I started, social media wasn't a thing. There were no like gym owners mouthing off on Instagram and stuff.
I mean, Facebook was just getting started 2008.
100%. You still needed like an edu address to be on social media. So like a lot of my jiu-jitsu journey was sort of in the early days of social media and stuff. So, but then like, there's a weird, I've always, I don't even know if this has anything to do with your question or not, but the whole idea of like this loyalty to your gym, and like, what if through social media you find out that like the way that your professor is speaking on social media is way opposite the way that you feel about things, and they're like borderline racist or misogynist or like what do you do at that, especially if you've been there for a long time and you're kind of only just realizing this? That's like really difficult as well. And cross training was not looked upon favorably when I started. The term creonch was thrown about all the time, especially if you like went to another gym that was way closer to your house than the one you originally started going to. But like, this is my life. I can't spend 90 minutes on the road every day trying to get to jiu-jitsu. There's so like this idea of loyalty to your gym and your teammates as well. There's so many people there. Some you'll get along with, some you don't. Sometimes the amount of people that you don't get along with becomes way larger than the number of people that you do, and you might not want to be part of that community anymore. So it's just, I guess it's gotten noisier, and social media has made everything noisier. You can't even avoid it. And like, you have to I've deleted Twitter. Like, I can't be on it anymore. I have to delete it.
I was saying, you can just delete it. That's what I make my
that's
posts
the only
and I get
way.
the hell off there,
That's the only way. I've deleted threads, like Instagram tries to show me the threads, and I have clicked on them many times, and then it goes and says, you don't have this app. And I'm like, you damn right I don't. Let me get out of it, because I know that I'm getting tricked into following something that's just going to fire me up anyway. So it's just gotten like louder, and people have outed themselves as having certain types of perspectives. So I don't have to like personally deal with it a lot, but it does make me proud that Tap Cancer Out is a part of the jiu-jitsu community that is shining the light on the positive element of what we do, and the people who truly do want to make a difference, and the gym owners that make it a priority to fundraise and host events on our behalf. And that's really meaningful, and I hope that by their involvement in Tap Cancer Out, and we give them, we have banners now, custom banners that we give to everybody, not everybody, but as many academies as we can, that shows how much they've raised in their lifetime. Because we have academies now that have been supporting us for over a decade, have raised hundreds, if not 200s of thousands of dollars for us. Like, that's a differentiator. If your instructor cares enough to rally the troops, even if it's once a year for the one time that we come to their area, to fundraise and get everybody involved in this cause, that's a differentiator to the gym that probably just opened right down the street. Like, again, when I started, it was a half hour this way or a half hour that way. Now we have 6 gyms in my town. So if I'm a new white belt, how do I tell the difference between any of these academies? Everybody's got a black belt instructing. Everybody's got medals on the walls. Like, everybody has all those things. So it's even harder now to like figure out which gym is right for you. So maybe like one of those green flags, I suppose, is their participation in things like Tap Cancer Out or We Defy or Adopt a Cop, or even like Guardian gyms. You can actually join them in the US. They're not just like gyms for kids in Peru. They have many US locations. So just seeing like those things, hopefully it helps people identify the gyms and the gym owners that are really out there for the better.
Cool. What are you doing outside of the tournament format specifically to continue to grow funding and kind of support for cancer? As far as like, not everybody competes, not everybody wants to do a tournament. Some people are beat up or broken down or feel like they're too old or their bodies can't quite handle it, whatever the reason is. What are you doing to support Tap Cancer Out in other ways?
Yeah. So back in 2020, we weren't able to host any events. We had 2 in like January, and then the world shut down and we couldn't have any. So I had to like figure out something, and I had to figure it out fast. What I saw other nonprofits doing who would have, those like 5K run, walk type things, they were basically saying, hey, listen, it doesn't matter if you run 5K in this very specific area that we're telling you to run and that you all do it at the exact same time. Just run 5 kilometers around your neighborhood. Do all the fundraising leading up to it. We can all do it on the same day. But this will be the day of the run. You do it in your neighborhood and then you fundraise leading up to it. And so that was like their virtual pivot. And I needed to figure out a virtual pivot for Tap Cancer Out. But you can't just do jiu-jitsu by yourself. So I had to like think of a boondoggle, so to speak, to have an event that at the time, would still be safe. I wasn't encouraging, academies under the darkness of night to gather everybody together and train in this big, large group in mid to late 2020s. But I also, so I had got my black belt a couple years prior. And in order to do that, it's not like a test or whatever, but we had to roll for an hour straight. Every 2 or 3 minutes, it was a new brown or black belt. I got one break at 30 minutes and that was it. I was cooked after about 5 minutes. So it was 55 minutes of hell after that with my son, like sitting there watching me get destroyed for the whole time. And so I was like, okay, I did that. I survived. So maybe the format for Global Grappling Day. So we came up with this idea, Global Grappling Day, anyone, anywhere. It's one day, grab one partner and find a safe space to do this for a 1 hour round. So, we typically roll for 5 to 10 minutes. An hour is hard, but it's not impossible. A 5K is hard, but it's not impossible. A marathon, you might die if you try to run, or like an Ironman or a triathlon, you could drown, so like an hour long round, you flow for 15, 20 minutes, you probably do an open mat for an hour anyways. You're just rolling with different people and you get little breaks here and there. So, so we launched it in, I think, August of that year. And we were like, hey, let's see if people take to this. And it immediately took off. Super fast, and because people were itching to get involved in Tap Cancer Out as they do on a yearly basis, but they couldn't come to our tournaments. So all of these tournament competitors who could no longer compete, they loved this idea. And so they would grab their partner, and so, some were able to get into their academies and do it. Some did it in their garage. Some didn't have a jiu-jitsu partner. And so it was just their significant other, and they like taught them a lesson for an hour. It was whatever you wanted it to be. And we ended up raising $275,000 in that first year for Global Grappling Day. And I believe it was like 6 or 7 countries were involved. So that was wonderful. By the next year, we were back hosting our tournaments. So Global Grappling Day sort of shifted a little bit. It was less involved because people were back at our tournaments, but what was left were all those people who still couldn't come to our tournaments, or they don't like to compete, and they may have a tournament local to them, but they don't like to compete. So Global Grappling Day would be their thing. And so it actually became more of an academy focused event. We had a lot of academy owners saying, hey, I know you guys did this last year. I'd like to have people coming to my academy so we can like turn this into a day, like a big holiday, special day, to give back. And there are many days like this, like Black Friday, Giving Tuesday, like Cyber Monday. These days like didn't exist. And now we all understand what those days are because they were like branded. So we've tried to brand Global Grappling Day. It's always the second Saturday in December, but it's the one day where anyone, anywhere can take the fight to cancer through jiu-jitsu. We have the same structure as our tournaments. So you fundraise and you earn perks. That's different perks. Last year was the first year we actually differentiated all the perks. We were excited about that. So you can earn different stuff for Global Grappling Day. We got a lot of brands involved. Fight Soap, Monkey Tape. They donated a whole bunch of stuff for us to, and also, I can't remember the third. I'm gonna get back on that. Hostage tape, the mouth tape. So if you raised $100, you got products from all of them. Sorry. And the more you raised, the more stuff you got. But The way that you would actually execute that day, and by you, it's, you know, whether it's you and a partner, or it's you're the academy owner, it's whatever you wanted it to be. So my school, I train at Great Grappling in Fort Mill, South Carolina. They still love the hour-long round. So at 9 or 10 a.m., you have your partner there. Last year, there was 20 of us, so 10 pairs. We set the clock for 60 minutes and we go. Then from there, I went to another gym. They're having more. I go to Queen City and it's more of like an open mat. They have raffles going on and so on and so forth. Then I go to another gym. They're hosting a seminar, but they also have a food truck and a coffee truck. And so there's so many different ways to do this. Adam Bradley already hosted a Global Grappling Day event like 7 months ahead of the actual day. But he's like, I'm hosting an event. You know, I know Global Grappling Day is far away, but I'm going to host a seminar and I want to give you guys all the money. So I want to set up a Global Grappling Day page. So we did that for him. And so it can really be whatever you want it to be. And it can honestly be whenever you want it to be. But yeah, December 13th is the day where like we are going nonstop. Typically we have some supporters in Singapore. So they kick it off like right at midnight Eastern, which is like 9 a.m. their time or whatever. So they're going at it. And it's just really cool to see all of the people at the top. Well, not all, but many people at the top of the Instagram thing, all these people live, and you click into it and they're doing their hour-long round or they're having their event. And it's really special. So last year was the first year we actually exceeded our first year. So last year we raised over $300,000 for Global Grappling Day. So we think it's going to be our first $1 million event. You know, that would mean it's our first $500,000 event too. But, you know, because it's endlessly scalable. You don't have the limitations that a tournament does of parking and venue and how many matches you can fit in a day and things like that. So,
and when these people are there, are they connecting through like a Zoom or whatever? Like, so how is like, so you're all doing this together. What is I guess like the communal aspect of it? How does that work?
They're not required to like report back to us what they did that day. I really, you know, it doesn't matter.
Gotcha.
So we're just trying to voraciously consume all the content that we're getting tagged in and all the live streams and all the stuff. It's really just about you celebrating with your community. We also, any academy that tells us that they're hosting an event gets a big 6 foot by 4 foot banner that has like our logo on the left side, a thermometer that they can fill in if they have like a goal of how much they want to fundraise. And then the rest of it is white. And then at the top of it, it says, these grapplers change the world today. And then everybody signs it. So everybody who shows up signs it. And then you keep that. We actually got the idea from a gym, Queen City, here in Charlotte, that did that. And I was like, damn, that's a good idea. I need to copy that. So did that like second or third year Global Grappling Day. But yeah, so it's a way to commemorate like what they did. They can write how much they raised. But again, you know, just another point of differentiating, but a way to establish, you know, this idea of doing good for others within your culture of your academy and your gym. You know, a lot of our jiu-jitsu journey can be, I don't want to say selfish. It's like individual. You know, I'm trying to get myself better. I want to win tournaments. Like, it's not truly a team sport where like I can give you an assist and then you can score the point and things like that. So, you know, and that's what drew me to jiu-jitsu. You know, I only had to depend on myself, but so this is a way to really, you know, bring your team and your community together to achieve something as a larger, you know, unit and academy.
Awesome.
Well, how are you guys continuing? Like, what's the game plan moving forward? What do you guys have besides Global Grappling Day this year? What tournaments you guys have coming up, or what's on the down the line?
Well, yeah. So right now we are in the midst of our fall tour. So we just had our Raleigh tournament last weekend. It was actually the biggest tournament of the year in terms of number of competitors. We had almost 600. It will eventually be usurped by Philly and Massachusetts, which are later this year, which are always our two biggest. But that was wonderful. So I believe we'll be in 8 or 9 cities this fall, all the way up until mid-November. We finish in Massachusetts. That's our biggest tournament of the year. 2 days, probably 1,000 competitors. So it's actually adults on the first day, kids on the second day. And then a few weeks later, it's Global Grappling Day. Next year, we're actually expanding our West Coast locations. So we have historically only been to Phoenix and San Diego out on the West. The next Western would be like Colorado, I guess, or maybe one of the Texas cities. So we're going to do San Diego next year again, of course, but then we're going to head up the coast the next 4 weeks. So we're going to hit LA, San Jose, Salt Lake City, and Seattle, all cities that we've never been to. So we're really excited to get into those communities. You know, we've been doing this for a long time, but there's still so many cities that we've never been to that, you know, we want to get to know them and expose them to Tap Cancer Out and what we're doing, and give them an opportunity to get involved. The running joke was, you know, if you live in Seattle, there's not a Tap Cancer Out tournament anywhere near you. So that was sort of one of the reasons we wanted to come up with something like Global Grappling Day. Like, it's not their fault that they don't come to our tournaments. We are nowhere close to them. Sure. So like, what can we do? So, but now we're getting up there. And so that is gonna, up our number of events in 2026 to 25 tournaments, I believe. Additionally, you know, we've been trying to like get out of our bubble and this big fish, small pond syndrome we've had of just focusing on if we only focus on the areas where we have tournaments, and, you know, we want to make sure that they're good, but you only get to know the people in those areas. So if we go to another city and I walk into any academy there, they may have no idea who I am or what Tap Cancer Out is, or I've ever heard of us. So at the end of last year, at the end, or 2 years ago, I guess, we made it a point going into 2024. We made it a point that we were going to get out of our bubble. We're going to figure out a way. We didn't know what it was yet, but we needed to get out. We knew that. So we reached out to the IBJJF. That's what helped us get into Jiu-Jitsu Con. CJI didn't exist, but CGI was obviously one of the things that helped put us on the map in terms of exposing us to the global jiu-jitsu community, and also, you know, the jiu-jitsu community in the areas where we don't have tournaments and stuff. So being their primary beneficiary for CGI 1 was incredible. And, you know, when Craig mentioned that he wanted to do something philanthropic and work with a charity, it was like full steam ahead. It had to be us. Like, this is what we had been working on for a decade. So when they thought of jiu-jitsu and charity together, they have to think of Tap Cancer Out. You know, like we had been working to be known as the jiu-jitsu nonprofit. So we were able to make it happen, and that really got us a ton of exposure that we could not have gotten otherwise. And obviously the funds that they donated to us were tremendous, but and I'm not I don't like to offer exposure to my photographers or designers or anything like that. But man, the exposure that we got at CGI was potentially even more valuable than the actual funds that we got. It was awesome. So we just want to continue to get out there and into, you know, partner with other organizations that are hosting events and other individuals. You know, Marcelo Garcia and Bernardo Faria were both at our booth at Jiu-Jitsu Con, but I've gotten to know Marcelo over this last year. We're filming some content with him to do a documentary on his journey and his life, and obviously his very special story. So doing those types of things as well are important for us. So yeah, just trying to expand in that way without just adding more events. I don't want to, you know, there's many tournaments that host way more events than we do. That's not really the life that I want to lead right now. So we're trying to figure out other ways to grow.
All right, Chew, you got anything, man?
No, man, it was fantastic. Thanks for being on the podcast with us. And
my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thank you guys for being here on the podcast. Appreciate you all. Again, cool organization. If you want to check them out, check out Tap Cancer out, get the details on their competitions, the fundraising things they're doing in Global Grappling Day coming up December 13th, 2025. Big thanks to all of you that listen. For whatever reason, I received a fair amount of Instagram messages over the last couple of weeks of people telling me they're enjoying the podcast and so forth. And so again, appreciate you guys for taking the moment to send those messages or emails. And yeah, I think that's it for today. So big thanks to our sponsors for helping make the podcast happen. If you guys want to check them out and save some green stuff, then go to their website, or well, it may not be this is an international, so it may not be green stuff. If you're American, it's green stuff. Digits on a screen. It's so weird, like
virtual money. It could be crypto.
One of the young guys at the gym the other day was like, talking about like, they're like, who pays cash for stuff? And I looked at him and said, this guy. I like cash. I like paying cash. I like I like feeling that money go out of my hands to someone else, that I'm a little bit more thoughtful about it, opposed to just like swiping everything.
It's harder. Like if you have a amount of it and give it away, you're like, oh, well, it's not infinite. There's some that like I'm losing now, or some that I've spent.
Well, I like that, like the tangible tactile stuff, even like books. I like stuff I can touch. Like even if you guys have followed me any closely on any of my products, like almost all my products that come out now, there's like a physical version to it, because I want to, like, for me, like, it's so easy to just lose things in digital world. Whereas if it's something sitting on my bookshelf or it's in my home, I actually see it versus whatever, and I'm more likely personally to use it. And so I like doing the same thing for people. And so anytime I come out with a new course, instructional book, whatever, it's like there's a physical aspect. I still have digital. You can still get the digital if you want digital, but I tend to find that people get more value from the physical because it's actually there. And especially if you're an old folk, like us, you're 30, 40 plus, you probably grew up with physical stuff that you could like touch and feel and sat around. But anyway, enough talking about that. Big thanks to our sponsors for helping make this podcast happen. If you want to get some products that you can touch and feel and are real, you can go check out CBD products from Charlotte's Web at charlottesweb.com. And if you want to save whatever color your denomination is, or whatever sort of money you use, you can save 30% on the order with the promo code Chewjitsu30 for 30% off the order at charlottesweb.com. Also, Epic Roll, another company that makes real stuff that you can touch, feel, and wear. They make a lot of great jiu-jitsu gear, great designs, great customer service. They support a lot of people in the jiu-jitsu community. You can check them out at epicrollbjj.com, and the promo code is Chewjitsu20 for 20% off the order. If you guys would like to support the podcast directly, this is more of a digital thing, but hey, maybe in the future we'll additionally add some stuff in there. But as of right now, we got some different perks. If you guys want to check out the perks of our Patreon, I'm sure you know how this whole thing works, right? You support the podcast and you get access to exclusive stuff, and in return, it's like this win-win where you support the podcast, you get this in return. Check out at patreon.com/the Chewjitsu podcast for more information on the perks we offer, and to become a member of our Patreon and support the podcast directly. And guys, if you want to get my daily email that I send out called the Chew Crew, become a member of the Chew Crew, and also get access to a ebook and video that goes into adding more focus to your training. As I talked about in the beginning of the podcast, really important, especially if you're an older grappler and you have less training time. You got to be really dialed in on the time that you do have to make the most of it. You coming in and training really hard and getting after it really isn't enough. You could actually train maybe a little less intense sometimes and get far more from your training if you're very intentional with the way that you go about it. And the ebook will give you 12 different ways to do that. Easy enough, simple, easy stuff that even a white belt could do during the open mats. So if you want to check it out, go to chewjitsu.net/join. I'll give you the resources for free. And then afterwards you become a subscriber to my email, which you can unsubscribe from anytime. But a lot of people enjoy the emails, and that's that. So guys, thank you so much for being here. We do appreciate your listenership each and every week. And yeah, I think that's it. Thank you all for being here. Talk to you next time.